soil? How many orbs are in Kenya in total? How many of them were used in this identification? And do all the orbs in Kenya carry the same specifications? I'd also like to know if the Worldcoin Foundation has any representation in Kenya or any representation in the party that accompanies Alex today. Chair, we are understanding that there is quite a lot that has been ceded from Worldcoin itself to Worldcoin Foundation. We'd like to understand if their representation is here today and whether there are any Worldcoin representations, Worldcoin Foundation representation in Kenya. Finally, Chair, the Constitution of Kenya is extremely clear about discrimination. Discrimination along racial lines, gender lines, ethnic lines, and so on. I'd like to know, if I was a Kenyan, very keen to enroll onto Worldcoin, and unfortunately I happen to be blind, am I totally locked out of this Worldcoin iris registration? Or how do you deal with people living with disability, and especially humans who are visually impaired, who would not present themselves for an iris scan? Would you term the operations at KICC as very discriminatory against the people living with disability? That would be the question. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Kiarie. And earlier suggested that we do the bunch of three, but having listened to him, the validity of the question and the numbers well, I think it will be just fair enough to let them actually respond, plus the other three or so questions asked earlier. I think that will be in order.
Honorable Chair.
Yeah, they're quite about like 6 or 7, but very valid.
Honorable Chair, thank you. Could you repeat the three from earlier? Just want to make sure we address those correctly for you. Three questions from before.
You didn't note them down? It was the issue of, we thought that you did register as a data protector, controller rather, but to move now to conduct business in the country, you need to have moved further and look the certificate or license to carry business in the country, you being a foreign company. Yeah, you need to expound on that. I think the other issue being asked by Wakili was that we thought that the safeguards are not quite enough to prevent the minors subscribing to the app in regards to the informed consent. So those are the, I think, the other question. One was from Mayaka, but she will have an opportunity. She can expound on our question.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Very good.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you, Honourable Chairman. So I count 11 questions that we will now try to work through fully.
Plus the 2, so 13.
I counted 14, but yes.
14. Hi.
Well, 14 with the previous ones, yes, that's correct. So the first one referred to Worldcoin being registered in Kenya. I will give this to Thomas.
Thank you, Honourable Member, Honourable Chair. As previously stated, Tools for Humanity is not registered in Kenya under the Business Registration Act. We have looked at the definitions in that act as to what constitutes actual business activities, the buying and selling of goods and so forth, and concluded that we were under no obligation to register. We obviously work with local partners who would have an obligation to register, and with each partner that we enter into a contract with. We perform diligence, including seeking their business registration certificates to ensure that they are registered. To the extent the Honorable Committee feels that there is a lack of clarity in those in the definition of actual services, and that the Act does or perhaps should encompass activities like ours. We understand that to be the function of this body. But under current law, as has been interpreted in consultation with our local lawyers, we have concluded we have no obligation. And for the sake of clarity, I was referring in there to Tools for Humanity, the entity where I sit, but Worldcoin Foundation is also not a registered business in Kenya for the sake of completeness. We did, at Tools for Humanity, register with the Data Protection Officer, as you understand, or with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. The Worldcoin Foundation has sought to register with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner and has not heard back after submitting that application.
Thank you, Thomas. Question number 2, which refers, broadly speaking, to essentially, is Worldcoin trying to interfere with government activities? So is Worldcoin trying to create a global currency that is not an accepted legal tender? Also, identification is usually something that is done by governments. And so, a couple notes here. First of all, I do agree. I do agree to the fact, so I don't agree with the statement. I agree with the fact that these are very well the responsibilities of a government, meaning issuing legal identities. Legal identities mean much more than just stating I'm a unique user, or like essentially the fact of a CAPTCHA on the internet, more sophisticated CAPTCHA. Legal identities are something very different. They're my name, my address. In the United States, it would be a social security number. That is not what we're trying to do. In fact, Worldcoin is designed to be privacy preserving. There is nothing we can do to change that, even if we would want to. That's just the inherent design of the protocol. That being said, within the design of the protocol, it would be a government can decide to use that if they would want to. For example, to issue legal identities, all of that would be possible and not within our control because it's an open protocol. It's an open source protocol that you can decide to use and everyone else can decide to use as well. We do not try to interfere with any government and that's in any sort. It's solving a very different problem. 2, to the currency and the legal tender. I do believe, I understand the question and I understand where it is rooted, but I think it is very important to note that cryptocurrencies as such are tokens and they are built on top of Ethereum. And in fact, Ethereum itself is a very good example of why I think that statement lacks a lot of depth. Because, for example, what Ethereum achieves, Ethereum you have a blockchain, and then, of course, there's also a token, ETH, that is traded on markets. But Ethereum is fundamentally a decentralized computer that developers and businesses can build on top of. And actually, Worldcoin is an application of that because a lot of the identity system we have built, a lot of the software that we have been built is built on top of Ethereum. And the Ethereum token is a very important piece of that, because the Ethereum token actually ensures the decentralization of the system. Ethereum moved away from proof of work to proof of stake recently, meaning the Ethereum token actually is a very important piece to achieve consensus of the protocol. So, long story short, what I'm trying to say here is that tokens are not legal tenders or legal currencies. That's not the point. The point is they're a very important piece of a technology that tries to be decentralized and tries to achieve a certain goal. And the same will be true with the Worldcoin token. The Worldcoin token will distribute and decentralize governance over the system, distribute and decentralize ownership over the system. And at this point, there are many examples of such systems that I think can be referred to. To the question of
Chair, there's a very critical concept that Alex misses in that question. I wasn't posing it in regard to the value of the token as a legal tender. I was looking at it from the point of consumer protection. If you claim that what was offered is a token, and the understanding of the Kenyan was that this token had a value, informing the long queues at KICC and other places, who then will be protecting these Kenyan? Because now you have taken the responsibility away from the regulator, who is central bank, who regulates over transactions. And to put it to you, Kenyans did truly understand this as a transaction. The reason why you saw so many Kenyans coming out is because just for scanning the iris, they thought there was compensation in monetary terms. Now they come, they receive a token. This token has nobody regulating over it. The question is based on the premise of consumer protection in the absence of a regulator, who in this case would have been central bank. To who would the Kenyan go to? Now, even now, understanding that Worldcoin has no footprint in Kenya, neither does Tools for Humanity. So the question was premised purely not on the technology, but on consumer protection.
Chair, maybe also before Alex asks the question, Mr. Thomas left out a very critical information which Honorable KJ asked in terms of, number one, what documents do you have to show that you are licensed to collect data all over the country? To us, this is very important because it touches on national security. It touches on matters pertaining to advising the local police that 300, 400 people are gathering for you to collect their data. It touches on the county licensing laws. It even touches on matters politics, because when 300 people gather for data to be collected, is it a public levy? What is it? Because therefore we want to understand, because I'm sure, Thomas, that cannot happen in America. It cannot happen in Germany. So we want to find out from the commissioner of data protection, what document did they give you to have now the power to go and collect the data? Because currently, and I think Honorable Keja has said very clearly, it looks like it's a gang of criminals who are coming to harvest data for our young people for an exchange for money. So we want to find out, and because again we want to know where does the fault lies? Does the fault lies with the commissioner of data protection? Does the fault lie in the lacuna of our laws? So at least again we can be able to address it. So I will be very happy to be specific on what gave you the strength to be able to go to the ground, hire the team which you hired through the marketing sense, and start collecting data, because that is very, very important. Thank you so much.
Honorable Chair, point of information.
I hope we don't overload them, lest they also lost track.
Yeah, point of information, Honorable Chair. In relation to the registration of the company, Honorable Chair, Companies Act, Section 974, talks about the foreign companies. And Section 974, when the foreign company may carry on business in Kenya, and it says, and I read for clarity, that a foreign company shall not carry on business in Kenya unless, one, it is registered under this part, or it has applied to be registered and the application has not been dealt with within the period prescribed for the purpose of this section. So there is no way the Tools for Humanity or the Tools for Humanity Corporation may carry out activities or business activities through other agents without registration. It is within the Companies Act. And for this, your lawyers advised you. They completely give you wrong legal advice, and you should sack them with immediate effect.
Chairman, just before the World of Humanities fire in their legal counsel, maybe you can be able to give the opportunity to the legal counsel to quote that specific sections of Companies Act, which was exempting you from seeking registrations with as per our laws. Kindly, you can allow them so that they can be able to quote which sections, because from our side, we have quoted what our law says. Maybe we are operating from different parameters.
And just to help Thomas, one, if there are other documents, especially the correspondence between yourselves and the Data Protection Commission, you can still furnish us. But again, we should all, I think we said it, we confirmed from the start. We're very objective, and I think we should be able to, it's not in our interest to stifle innovation. It is actually the agenda of the Kenya Kwanza to advance, but we must be also honest to the realities where we think there are omissions and commissions. We should just be able to be honest enough to accept, so that we don't, push and pull. So that if there are areas that they're glaring maybe gaps in our laws, this is the house that looks into such. Yeah. So I hope you don't lose track. Mayaka can add something, then we let them exhaust a bit.
Yeah, kindly, Chair. I just wanted to...
But let's be honest.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize on them the reason why they actually really need to sack their lawyers. Because subsection 3 of what Honorable Ruku read to you actually says, if a foreign company carries on business in Kenya in contravention of subsection 1 that he read, the company and each officer of the company who is in default commits an offense and on conviction are liable to a fine not exceeding 5 million Kenya shillings. So maybe you might want to check again with your lawyers on what exactly they told you about this.
Understood, Honorable Member. I'll address those questions that I understand come from a few members and that it's a concern of the entire Honorable Committee. I note that in the last two comments, Section 9741 were read and Section 9743 were read. What was not read was Section 9742, defining what it means to conduct business in the country. And I ask the Honorable Committee to refer to that definition. For the purposes of subsection 1, carrying on business in Kenya includes, but is not limited to, offering debentures in Kenya or being a guarantor for debentures offered in Kenya. Setting aside the question of what a debenture means, which I will leave to others, that is the specific question we have today, is whether Tools for Humanity was falling in the definition of subsection 2. And again, it is our understanding that we do not, based on the advice of counsel who work with dozens of companies in this country. As you know, I'm not a trained Kenyan lawyer. I work with the best Kenyan lawyers that I am aware of, and that is our understanding of the crux of the matter, is the definition of subsection 2 of section 974 of the Registration Act. We are happy to engage further with that, including in a consultative process with this honorable body, if that definition is, it could be further clarified, perhaps through regulations or something of that. Thank you.
But meanwhile, we are asking to submit the correspondent between yourself and data protection. Your legal team, you should be supplying to the Secretariat. I'm sure you have them. Kuyo.
Understood.
Yeah, we want to capture them on record because, as Kiaria put it, there are more than one occasion that there have been letters of advising you to suspend the services.
May I address, Honorable Chairman?
Do you have them?
We have them. We do not have them all physically printed out at the moment as a packet for the.
You can share with the Secretariat in whichever form, even in soft copy.
We are happy to do that, Honorable Chairman. We also
or at some point you can read.
I'm happy. I have a written timeline that I'm happy to walk through for the benefit of the Honorable Committee.
Okay.
I agree. I think it's an important aspect of what we are doing here and what the public deserves to understand.
Okay. When we come back for lunch, after lunch break, you will prepare them and have it ready for our Secretariat.
Understood. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Sorry, plus even other actually important registration certificate of the Tools for Humanity, maybe article of memorandum, and such. I think your legal team, Kuyo, and the team. So go on. You have not exhausted the question from members.
I think we were just at question 1, Honorable Chair.
John has not even spoken yet.
I'll just address the second piece of the Honorable Member's question, which was, where do you get the strength to operate here? We will set aside for a moment the ODPC registration certificate, which, as I described, we did secure before when it became possible to seek that registration. We sought and secured it. As to the other questions, things of local licenses and permits and things like that, our sources of strength are at the data level, where Tools for Humanity engages. We sought that registration. For things like permits, hosting events, that sort of thing, that's obviously different parts of the Kenyan government that are not at the ODPC. They don't offer event registrations and so forth. And our source of strength for that purpose is our operating partners, who again are registered businesses in the country and who seek the necessary licenses to conduct their activities within the borders of the country of Kenya. I believe we still have several questions to go, so I'll defer to my colleague Alex. Thank you.
Thank you. We stopped at question 2, where the honourable member made a clarification of how the question was framed, how it was meant, which I think actually Thomas will address in his responses as well, because it refers to consumer protection around cryptocurrencies in Kenya specifically. And I think that's something that Thomas can touch on more in question number 5, at least as I noted. I will now hand off actually question number 3 also to Thomas, because it is about fundamental legal question, which is the Orbit communication device, and do we have the required approvals for that? Thomas, thank you.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, Honorable Member, for that question. On the communications device, as you probably appreciate when it comes to things like type approval, these are regulations that seek to put the whole world of technology into very specific categories and list them. We looked through the lists for type approval. That is a law that, from what I understand, was enacted in 1998, and the pursuant regulations were promulgated in the year 2010. And we looked through the list for type approval purposes and concluded that the Orb device, which is novel, did not fit into any of those categories. We looked at all of the available guidance, including the available guidance on the Internet of Things devices, so-called IoT devices. It's also an interesting point, if I may. in speaking with the Communications Authority on this very specific question of type approval for the orb device, they brought up our publicly available images of the orb device. And they said, well, what about this component? What about that component? They noted, for example, that there is a SIM card holder in the device, SIM card like in your mobile phone. We don't use SIM cards. That's a legacy piece that was there in case we later decided that that was a critical thing to have. But the point is that the Communications Authority technician was able to meaningfully scrutinize what we are doing and ask that question. We are most happy to continue that conversation. My understanding is that the Communications Authority right now is in possession of at least one orb device and is evaluating that very question. Perhaps with the goal of concluding that the orb device should have sought type approval, or for the purpose of updating the regulations to contemplate a device as new as the orb device. But as the laws and regulations were reviewed and interpreted, our understanding was there was no requirement to seek type approval at the time we had orb devices functioning in the country. Thank you.
Just point of information on that specifically. We had the DCI here, we had the Communication Authority, and on matters regarding the gadget, the OP. The impression created was, having analyzed, it was actually noted to have been, supposed to have been classified as a communication gadget. It was declared as a biometric scanner from the point of entry, while supposed to have been a communication gadget, when where the type approval is supposed to have been sought. So just that point of information.
Chair, and to enforce your point, it was not just an impression created. The Office of the Director of Criminal Investigation and the Office of the Director General Communications Authority verified to this committee that the orb is indeed, in their classification, a telecommunication device, and as such, a device that should have sought for a type test and a type approval. But the bigger point here now is, if Wakili is telling us that the engagement with CA is ongoing, the question then begs, should such tests or approvals happen before operationalization and the activations, or should they happen as they are ongoing, or should they happen after? And to my mind, the type test is required, the type approval is required before they go on the ground and start the activations. So the question is, did the orb get the prerequisite clearances from Communications Authority in regard to a gadget type test and a type approval?
I think we don't need to go on that because it's clear. The communication we had already is unanswered from Communication Authority, DCI, is that it is a communication gadget. It was not declared as so when it was being introduced into the country. So, Thierry, on that one, I think you need not to visit on that. It is clear. That is the finding.
Chair, on the same question.
Of course, it's supposed to have been declared before it's being used. You don't need to ask that. It's
Chair,
clear.
on the same question,
yeah.
I need to say something. Since the OPT is scanning the Irish, why didn't you ship it as medical equipment?
Chair. Can I go ahead, Chair? Linking to the same question we just been asked. And just a matter of clarification, okay, so that it can guide the other questions. You operating in Kenya, and I need a quick response on this. You operating in Kenya, Are you operating as a business or something else? Or you are not operating? What are you in Kenya? You are a business, you are an NGO, are you a church? What are you?
We're a global technology company available on the internet, and we work with partners who do operate in Kenya and have registrations here.
Doing what in Kenya?
The partners?
What are you doing? What activity are you doing?
With our partners,
Get me right, which activity are you doing?
we are not conducting business in Kenya.
You're not doing business? Mm-hmm. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
So what are you doing?
We are working with local partners because we...
I'm not asking you who you are working with. I've asked you, what are you doing in Kenya? If you're not doing business, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Our partners are doing the work in Kenya.
No, sir, kindly answer my question. What are you doing in Kenya? Not your partners. Mm-hmm. If you're not doing business, which activity are you doing in Kenya?
I'm testifying, honorable member. We are not doing business in Kenya.
What are you doing?
Nothing. We are
You're doing nothing in Kenya?
In Kenya.
Chair, you may need to.
Just like Facebook, just like Uber, available, but not doing business in Kenya, we are the same.
Chair, I need clarification here, Chair. They are in Kenya. They are working with partners. Doing what? They have said they are not doing business. Because once we know what they are doing, we'll be able to check on the law which clearances you are supposed to have before you continue, before you operate. So that question is paramount to me and to this committee.
Maybe through chair. If I may, through chair, as with your leave.
Point of order, Chair. He cannot answer the question because he's not on oath.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chairman, just to support what my brother is asking. Basically, what you're asking, what is tools of humanity doing in Kenya?
Yeah.
You went ahead and sought registration with the Data Protection Authority. So what transactions are you doing here? Because the others are just agents of tools of humanity. So what is tools of humanity doing in the Republic of Kenya?
And this chair, and this will unlock for us how we will ask our questions. Because once you tell us you're not a business, and you've told us you're doing nothing, so why are you here if you're doing nothing in Kenya?
Well, we are a data controller.
So do we have the wrong people?
Maybe, Chair, excuse me, let me just shed a bit of light here. Under Section 974 of the Companies Act, which says a foreign company shall not carry on business in Kenya unless it's registered under this part, or it has applied to be registered and the application has not been dealt with within the period prescribed for purposes of this section. Subsection 2 says, for the purpose of subsection 1, carrying on business in Kenya includes, but is not limited to, and is not limited to offering debentures in Kenya or being a guarantor for debentures offered in Kenya. Maybe, Chair, just to help our visitors here, because again, remember, you are not on trial. We just want to make sure that to understand what you're doing in this country and how you're doing it for the benefit of these people. I think, Chair, my submission is that the 360 picture of the operation of Worldcoin cannot be clear unless this company called Marketing Nexus, Sense Marketing, are also in the house. So at least again, they can shed light, because I think if there's any misleading, which may have happened on Worldcoin, it was misled by that company called Marketing Sense. Because again, it's a foreign company which is working on the online, and you have a local company which is registered. I think that some of these questions, substantial questions, are supposed to be answered by the company registered in this country. So at least we can have a nexus between you and the locally registered company.
May I respond, Honorable Chair? Thank you. I'll just clarify one point I made earlier. We are a data controller, and we consider ourselves to meet the criteria for qualifying as such in Kenya. That's why we sought registration as a data controller. The guidance from the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, as we understand it, is clear that you can be not a registered company in Kenya and nonetheless qualify as a data controller. That's on their website, on the FAQs. Anyone watching on TV can go take a look. So that is what we are doing, is we're a data controller. The activities seeking local permits to host an event, a booth in a mall, this is all through the local partners, as the honorable member observed.
No, Chair, this is important for me. Chair, I will not move on until I'm satisfied. And just in a minute, just hold on, Chair. Don't, just allow me. That's why they are here. That's why they came all the way from states. Because you are seeking answers. First of all, we are not objecting technology. What you want to do for humanity, we are not objecting it. Our questions here is related to law. My question is, what kind of activity or operations were you doing or you are doing in Kenya before you are stopped, so that we can be able to ask you certain relevant sections of the law, whether you met the sections of the law,
Yeah.
or...
Point of order.
I was on a
Chair.
point of order, Chair.
Let Gideon finish.
It is a point of order on Gideon. Yeah?
I was on a point of order, Chair. Chair, you can...
Chair is a point of order on a point of order.
Maybe information.
We have this presentation, and they've told us very clear what they were doing. They gave us numbers. They told us they were giving free grant tokens. They even give us as figures the people who went to them. So what do you want us to know? Ziko hapa kila kitu.
Allow me, Honorable. Honorable, allow me. My colleague here has just read the issue of the Company Act on what you need to do to start business in Kenya. But from your presentation, you've told us that doesn't cover you because you're not doing business. Is that correct? So if you're not doing business, so we're not going to ask you questions related to business. So I want to know what kind of activity, was it charity? You know, so that I can go to the specific sections of the law that deals with charity. And that will be very important for me and paramount to everybody, so that we can now know whether you contravene to any section of the law. Otherwise, if we don't get to know what kind of activity you are doing, we will not be able to move, because you've already said you are not doing business.
Understood. My boss, my CEO, Alex, would like to respond to that.
Thank you. So that is not maybe it's a more general answer, but I think it is very important for this consideration. It's like, how do we fund this operation? How do we do what we do? How do we spend years of building these hardware devices? Is through venture capital. So that means that, and in our case, actually many of the most reputable firms in the United States invested money in this company, and in our case, a lot of money, over $250 million, to allow this operation.
Chair, so you are a company in the States. You are a registered company in the States. Is that yes or no?
Also, but this is not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make...
I just need clarification. You are a company registered in the United States, in USA.
That's correct.
That's correct.
And
but in Kenya, you're not a company.
That is correct.
So you operate in Kenya as well?
As a data processor, as Thomas explained. And
okay.
So fundamentally...
Allow me. You're saying you're operating as a data protector and a processor. The
Gideon,
essence,
let me try to
Honorable
guide
Chair.
this.
let me finish, Chair. I just need to understand this. Chair,
But I
allow me
think
to
it's
finish.
clear.
Allow me to finish,
I
Chair.
think it's clear.
Allow me to finish.
Chair.
Chair, allow me to finish. Please,
But let me
just
guide
1
on
minute.
how.
Allow me
Ask-
to finish.
Ask the two questions, because of course the committee, we are all listening. Even an answer that of course they could not satisfactorily respond to, we will make a
So let me finish then, Chair.
So-
Allow me to finish.
Yeah.
Allow me to
but-
finish, please.
Yeah.
The Data Protection Act, the essence of Data Protection Act was just to provide regulations on how data will be handled in Kenya. So you may be a company who is handling data. You may be a church who is handling data. So you cannot come here and say, because I'm just handling data and I've satisfied what the data protection says, then I'm allowed to do anything that I want to do in Kenya. Because I assume, even if I'm to come to your country, before I set up any business or any NGO, there are certain approvals that your government will have to give me. In this case, you never sought any. There is no approvals from any government entity. What you are safeguarding yourself only is that you are a data protectioner and a data processor. So once you have been allowed to be a data processor and a data controller, so you're allowed to operate in Kenya. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Gideon. Before we let Ruku under, there are still quite a number of questions. Actually, 8, if I'm right around there. And because what I was trying to say, of course, and a question not satisfactorily responded to, we will, of course, have our way of treating it. So petitioner has not even actually spoken. It's a few minutes to 2. So how many questions are addressed? 7, 8?
7 or 8, Your Honorable Chair.
7, 8. So will I ask like these members? Let's allow them like 20 or 30 minutes to try to respond to the 8 question. Then maybe we break. Then when we come for afternoon session, we will start with petitioner and the other unanswered question. Is that it? Ruku, I know you did ask also some questions. Rweda? Yeah.
When we come back from lunch, we should check which page is this? This page, it has all data, and this page. Worldcoin here is said to be a foundation. This is a document tabled. It is our document now. Thank you.
So, fine. You're crossing over to be more clarification. Yeah. Okay. So kindly, with the indulgence of members, kindly have them try to rush through the 8 questions to the best of their knowledge. And I told you guys, let's be truthful. Where we think there are gaps, maybe in the law, you can just admit it so. Where you think maybe there are omissions, it's not sinful to say. I think my colleagues were a bit rough to say the QOs and the rest should have been fired. That was back to you, Alex. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I think, as you're aware, I'm trying to, and all of us try to do our best to respond to questions, and that's why.
No one is on trial here.
Yeah.
Nobody. It's not in our interest to stifle innovation, but we should do things within the confine of the Constitution and regulation of the country.
Well understood.
And we are here for the interest of Kenyans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. So, to the, as I noted, question number 4 that came up, which I think essentially refers to what can be headlined as, Worldcoin in exchange for an iris scan. So it's seen as an exchange, and that's why Kenyans sign up. And well, first of all, I would want to clarify and clearly state that, again, we do not collect data. We don't have a business model around data. So it is not in our interest or in the business model that we want to induce anyone to participate in Worldcoin, and then that would result into another kind of business model, and that's how we would make money. In fact, I think what is happening here has had many precedents in technology, and I tried to touch on that earlier in my statement. I think when I get a credit card, when I get a PayPal account, all of those services, and again, I think actually PayPal is probably the best service to study and kind of looking backward how it worked, right? Because PayPal, when it launched, it gave $20 to everyone that decided to sign up for PayPal. They did not do that to steal anyone's data or get anyone's data and some other underlying business models. No. The underlying motivation was very simple. The underlying motivation is there need to be a certain amount of people that use PayPal for PayPal to do anything, because the only usage of PayPal, Venmo, and these services is around the fact that I have friends, I have other businesses that use the same service, and I can send money to my friends or to other businesses. And the same is very much true here, right? It is first, and then the other part is I talk to many Kenyans here. I talk to many Kenyans even in past, and I do think it is an oversimplification to state that Kenyans have seen it as an exchange, because I think there's a whole spectrum of depth of understanding of such a system that people have, as is not only the case in Kenya, but in every such situation. So, yeah, that would be my response. To question number 5, which refers to the question of the Central Bank of Kenya and statements against crypto, and how we see that, how we did react to that. And I will hand this over to Thomas.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The question, as I have it noted, is that the Central Bank of Kenya has issued warnings as to cryptocurrencies and digital assets. Were we aware of those, and did we account for those? My understanding of the history here in Kenya is that the CBK has taken a very thoughtful and deliberate approach to this set of questions. So, for example, they reviewed what's called a central bank digital currency, right? CBDC. And they said, we do not want to race to be first. They decided to take a more deliberate approach, allow the technology and its possibilities to become clearer, and all of the social implications to become clearer. They did issue warnings, and they noted that cryptocurrency companies or virtual asset providers should engage in people-centered and localized approaches to these things. I agree with that. If you go on our website, worldcoin.org, you will see in the footer there's privacy and there's risks. Cryptocurrencies, including Worldcoin, many cryptocurrencies are not tied to a fiat currency. They're not tied, many of them are not tied to US dollars or euros or Kenyan shillings. And so they change in value. Worldcoin, as we have seen, changes in value. And so those warnings are well heeded. Our understanding, though, is that what the CBK did not do is issue regulations on this matter, and that they are still pursuing that deliberate approach to this set of questions through the working group. So that's an important process that I think we are monitoring closely, but there's not anything applicable to us based on the issuance of a warning as we understand it. Next question.
Thank you, Thomas. Question number 6 refers to, which I would summarize as essentially have Kenyans, well, first of all, we're talking now about the time before launch, and we talk about the beta testing period. And the question refers to, have Kenyans been used as guinea pigs, and have we followed research protocols? And I think that's that is really not at all what has happened here, and that's very important to clarify that and state that. Because when we say beta testing, fundamentally what we're talking about is just that the technology, so for example the app, was just not at a state where we would be willing to actually launch and kind of globally launch and say like, okay, we're done now, and this is a final product, and we were very explicit about that. So what I mean by that is, just for an example, and I'm not very proud about that, is the app just crashed sometimes. You open the app and there were bugs in the app, and so it did not work. And there have been many instances of such cases. Or, for example, the battery of orbs died too early. So many of these things. And fundamentally what this just means is, being in beta is just, look, we still have a way to go on the technical engineering side. And that's why we are very explicit that we are in beta. And that's all that is meant. There is no, and the other thing that I think is very important to state is all of this really started in Germany. So it's not that we came to Kenya to test certain things, but rather back then I led a team, back then a very small team of 20, 30 engineers, and we developed the technology in Germany, and we talked to users in Berlin. We asked them, what do you understand? What do you not understand? What is clear? What is not clear? Does the orb work? Does the orb not work? Does the app work? Does the app not? And I think that's, everyone can understand such a topic. And why did we come to Kenya is very clearly because the intention of this technology is that it is global. It was not easy for us. In fact, it was really hard. We were in the middle of COVID. It was hard to come here. But the main intention and the main motivation of the project is to be a global force of good, to work not only in Germany, but also work in India, also work in Africa, widely speaking. So we wanted to see, okay, actually what changes do we have to make to be able to operate in a place like Kenya? And many things came up that would probably now sound funny to members of this honorable committee, because, for example, we tested the orb in Norway, and it was too cold, and so the orb stopped working. We tested the orb in Kenya. The sunlight here is much more intense than it is in Germany, and so the lens had problems dealing with the sunlight. So that is really what has happened here. Is
Honorable Chair.
Yes.
I've been really restricting myself from interventions, but I think this committee would really benefit from understanding actual dates of operation, to know at what point in Kenya Tools for Humanity viewed the operations to be in the beta phase, and at what point they viewed the operations to have gone live. This is critical, but I'll also want Chair to note, it might be the tone, it might be the approach, but there is a casual manner in which Alex seems to take the questions that are coming here, very contrary to what we are receiving from Wakili. When we talk about the Worldcoin being offered in exchange for the scan of the iris, we mean exactly that. Kenyans upon Kenyans have gone on record saying that their biggest incentive as to why they would agree to line up for hours on end was to receive 7,500 Kenya shillings. They did not see it as a token. They did not see it as an advance inducement akin to PayPal. They saw it as a transaction. There is someone in town who gives you 7,500 shillings when you scan your iris. Now, this is a parliament, as Chair has said, that would be very careful not to restrict technology. In fact, the approach with which you take might water down some very great gains that you would have made in the morning in the journey you took us onto what Worldcoin is. We were able to understand exactly why you are in town, what you're doing globally, and the casual nature in which you regard some of these questions might greatly water down your case. We are asking these questions knowing exactly why we are asking them.
Honorable Chair, in the same line, just to add kidogo to, is this team aware that ODPC, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, cancelled the Tool for Humanity Corporation Data Controller Certificate last night, which was issued in April?
Chair, just and I'm really happy with the Honorable KJ because he has asked very pertinent questions, and I agree there is some sort of water down with the answers we are getting. In April 2022, Technology Review, MIT publishment, clearly accused Worldcoin of taking advantage of students and targeting lower income communities. And they came into a conclusion, it is just cheaper and easier to run this kind of data collection operation in places where people have little money and few legal protections. Why are you taking advantage of Kenyans? Why are you taking advantage of Kenyans? Why are you taking advantage of our students? And what is your real agenda?
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. These are very important questions that I enjoy the opportunity to respond to. On the question that has come up about business activities, I want to close that loop before I go to the other questions, if I may. Plenty of companies are registered as data controllers in Kenya without registering as a business. You might have bought your Apple iPhone here in Kenya. Apple is not registered as a business. They work through resellers. This is consistent with the Business Registration Act. And to the Honorable Chairman's point, if there are concerns that any data controller should register locally, that may be something to consider as a requirement, but our understanding, based on guidance from ODPC, is that currently it is not. We believe in transparency, so does the government of Kenya. You can go to the business registry and see that, who's registered as a business, who's registered as a data controller. Thank you. To the other questions pending here, the point is well taken from the Honorable Member, Chair of CII Committee, or ICT Committee. When people sign up for Worldcoin, there are many reasons why they do so, and when they sign up for World ID, there are many reasons why they do so. We take what you're saying seriously, and I'll just acknowledge that although we have taken great pains to seek free and informed consent in our app, and as with any transaction, it takes two parties to understand what's going on. There's more public education, both with people in your capacities, with the public through media, and through other materials that we can provide at sign-up sites that I think are very important here. And that is an area where what we saw at KICC should have been improved. I don't want you to walk away thinking we do not take what you're saying very seriously and with the weight it deserves. To the Honorable Member's question about whether we are aware that ODPC revoked our data protection registration, they did so yesterday evening. No doubt that this is of interest to the fourth estate present, so thank you for raising. I'm happy to walk through, in addition to the other correspondence with the ODPC, I understand we will do that after lunch. I'm also most happy to walk through each of the 4 reasons that they provided for the cancellation of that certificate, and why, respectfully, we believe that the cancellation was outside of normal process and not based on correct underlying facts. Happy to address those, but I think it's probably better to do as an ODPC-specific discussion in the context of the larger timeline as well. But we are aware.
Chair, I am aware that this organization has been mining data in Kenya from 2021. And here they are telling us that they sought to get license in 2022. Honorable Chair, it is important while we are carrying out this investigation for these good friends of ours to come out clean on the survival they have used to actually just go round and round and take our data. And Honorable Chair, at the same time, we are here listening to Mr. Alex telling us that we don't sell your data. What is it that we have to believe him? That he don't sell the data that he collects? And the fact of the matter is, most of these technological companies, and I would like to know from their records of tax returns in whatever country, what were their sources of income? Besides the venture capitalists coming in, what were your sources of income and how much to that extent, even if it's the year 2022?
Chairman.
Considering is true, Ruku.
On the same question of venture
capitalists. From here.
Sorry?
It's true. Yeah. And I think we did kind of agree. You noted the question, what are the other sources of your income?
Yes, noted.
Because, of course, it was not a charity you had confirmed. As much as you wanted to create an equity and informed society for the economical space, but, of course, they're there to make profit. So maybe you will address this question. Just note it, Thomas, and any other question. So I will ask members we can break for, let's break. Let's break. So
Chair,
let's break.
Chair, I have a specific request. Just so that we don't lose the trail of thought.
We don't.
Yes?
I'd even personally recorded it. You want another question again?
No, not a question. Just in the interest of management of our time, would you have let them just conclude this batch of questions, and they can do it uninterrupted, so that when we come back, we get on to new
they
business?
Cannot. It's already 2. We had anticipated to have done it 1:30, so that we can take 1 hour break. So we can't back. Let's
conclude this batch of questions, Chair.
We cannot. From the way of look of things, okay. We have been in question number 4 for the last 40 minutes.
Chair,
Chair, I'm well guided.
Chair, will you allow me to add the venture capital question so that there can be 1 question?
Okay, let's allow only him to add to support the question.
Yes, to support, support the question.
And it will have it noted down. We will start with it.
Yes. Okay. My question on venture capitalists. Chair, the Tool for Humanity, they have so far raised about $227 million from different parties since inception in June 2019. And this chair says that they are a bit mean with information. The last capital raise round being a Series C in April 2023, they raised about $115 million, giving the Tools for Humanity a current valuation of about $2.4 billion. Is this a cash that you are distributing for free? Who distributes cash for free? As any Kenyan investor, politically exposed or otherwise, participated in this venture? Or are there any Kenyan shareholder of the company? Do you have any political links to the personalities in the previous administration? And if so, with whom and of which nature? We have heard, Honorable Chair, that there is a purported connection to the former Cabinet Secretary of ICT, Joe Moshero, and former President Uhuru Kenyatta's family. Is this so? Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Chair, may I address the questions? It went a little bit beyond venture capital, but I'm happy.
Do you think you can wait, or they are so burning?
I'm sorry, I missed that, Honorable Chair. Can you repeat?
Sorry?
Can you repeat? I'm sorry.
I'm saying, I think we can still wait. Just note them down. They will be the set of the first question we'll address when we come back. Yeah. So, members and for the state and all of us, it's already 2. We are going to have a 1 hour lunch break. We converge again here around 3. We are trying to organize how you can exhaust the first bunch of questions before we go to the other set. Thank you so much.